Right, it's Super Sunday and it's a special day for RCB. Ask me why. Well, they'll be donning green, but is it really special? Given the fact that they have an awful record in this fixture, let's see how it all unfolds at the Wankhede when they take on SRH at 3:30. Don't go anywhere. You'll want to watch this match preview with Dirk Nannes. Right, Dirk, first and foremost, welcome to the show. What do you have to say about RCB's green record, because it's horrendous to say the least?
Oh, well, every time I watch, I don't think I've ever actually watched an RCB game where they've won in their green jersey. I just don't recall it. Every time, it just seems like it was just ingrained that you put the green on and you lose.
Yeah, I mean, for the fans as well, you've got to have sympathy for them. I think the only good memory was that A.B. de Villiers Virat Kohli show against Gujarat Lions, it was, in 2016. So that's some solace to pick out the bones from. But we'll start with SRH before we come on to RCB in just a bit. What's gone wrong with Hyderabad in their last 3 games? Because 3 defeats, what's hurt them the most, you feel?
Well, look, it's hard to pinpoint, and it's probably a bit harsh to pinpoint it on one particular person. I think across the board they haven't been at their best. But probably when you look on paper, you look at their second bowler. Williamson's been getting smoked around the park. They leave him out. In comes Sean Abbott, and he gets smoked around the park as well. That position, the number 2 bowler, the international bowler, has gone none for 63, none for 78, and then 1 for 47. They're just getting plastered everywhere around the park. But at the same time, across this tournament, we've been a little bit critical of the way Kane Williamson goes about his batting and the slow rate that he scores. And even though a couple of games ago he scored a 47 or something like that, he was striking so slowly that he put the burden on everyone around him. So the challenge that he has is when he does go out for a 4 or something like that, like he has the last few games, the 4 is off 11 balls, or you just find he's just wasting a lot of time at the top of the order. So yeah, I think you can look and say it is the bowling. But I think also, he got away with it early in the tournament. He's not getting away with it now, particularly now the scoring's, they're putting on some pretty big scores at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Kane's numbers deeper, 10 innings. I think he strikes at just 96, and he has, of course, a shocking average of just 22. Now, normally when we calculate the Basra, which is the batting strike rate and the average, good players will have in excess of 160, 170, but Kane Williamson 118. Surely he needs to change his approach, right?
Well, you think so, but I guess on the flip side of that, and in his defence, they know exactly what they were getting when they pick and retain him and keep him as captain. You know, he hasn't changed his game. That's the way he plays his cricket. So I wonder whether you get that right at the start, or do you go away and do you say, right, Kane, it's time, you've got to change your game? They'll probably be loath to do that, but he does have to play with a bit more intent. And if you change the intent of his first 15 balls, all of a sudden that strike rate is completely different, because later on he does catch up. He does play really well. When he gets past his 20 balls and he plays on that, he's fantastic. It's just that start is just so defensive and negative, and that's what I think the team can ill afford.
Yeah, and that's putting pressure on the batters who come to follow in terms of Nicholas Pooran and Aidan Markram, but they've of course taken the mantle really well in terms of the batting and trying to add some sort of impetus. You mentioned the bowlers as well earlier. Now let's hypothetically ask you a question right now with regards to if you were the coach of SRH and if you had to pick 4 or 5 best bowlers to do the job on the day, who would you be picking?
I think the 4 of them pick themselves. Natarajan, Bhuvi, Washington Sundar, Umran Malik, who's been a bit of a revelation, but gets plastered around the park every now and then because I think he hasn't got a defensive game yet, but he's developing it and he'll come along really quick. And then after the last few games that we've been talking about, who's your international bowler? Williamson was so good earlier on in the tournament. He was great. He was miserly, and that's what I really enjoyed about him, which really aided everyone else who bowled around him. Sean Abbott adds a little bit with the bat as well. Someone who can clear the pickets as soon as he comes into the crease, but his bowling has a tendency to be a bit expensive. And that has been the trend in IPLs for him in the past, but I think he's much improved player than what we've seen in previous IPLs. I think he's a really good player. I just don't think he probably needs to have a little bit of a run at a few games to really feel like he belongs.
Yeah, I mean, even the last time they made the changes, it puzzled everyone because they didn't have a left armer. I mean, Natarajan, I think, is injured, but we don't know exactly what type of injury. Marco Jansen was tactically left out. They brought in Shreyas Gopal, so let's wait and watch who they kind of pick for this game because it's an afternoon encounter, so they might be tempted to go with two spinners if all goes well. Now, we spoke about RCB at the top of the show because, look, it is not a good omen when they play in green, and we'll put up the numbers right now. But jokes apart, though, they need the win. And how can they go about not just dominating a team who dominated them earlier, but what's the modus operandi going to be for RCB? Bat first, bat big?
I wouldn't bat. I don't know if bat first, bat big's their modus operandi because they can't bat big. That's been the issue so far. You'd normally say you lead with your strong suit. Batting's always been RCB's strong suit, but it's not at the moment. So, look, I just don't think they've been playing good enough cricket. And whilst they're in a reasonable position on the table at the moment, they don't have the luxury of having games in hand. Whilst they're ahead of others on the table, other people have got games in hand that can leapfrog them, and their run rate is poor. So I guess they're sitting there just waiting to be overtaken. So they have to just keep winning and winning and winning from here. I just don't know if they're playing good enough cricket to do it, but they have the team. They have the core team that can pull off big wins like that. You're just waiting on Maxwell to have a big innings. You're waiting on Virat to have a big innings out of the box that's got a decent strike rate. You're just waiting for these big names to perform, and they'll perform at some stage. Is it going to be this game? Who knows?
Now, one of the ways they could, of course, chop and change is maybe promote a couple of their batsmen. I'm talking about Dinesh Karthik in particular here because we've seen how well the uncapped players have risen to the occasion. Rajat Patidar comes to mind, not to forget Mahipal Lamror, who played a blinder the last game. But is there a case for DK to perhaps bat at 5, you think, Dirk?
Well, I think he plays that floating role, doesn't he? I think it's more the time that he comes into bat rather than where he bats in the order. Every time that he's had to come in super early, he hasn't necessarily shone. He shined in the last 5 overs. He's a great player that comes to the crease and bang, clears the picket straight away and hits 6s and 4s and strikes at a really high strike rate. So I really like that. Other people can fill the role of coming in early. A couple of times he's come in early, batted 5 against Gujarat, came in at 15.4 overs and failed. Batted 7 against Rajasthan Royals, came in 11th over, failed. We're looking at the games where he does succeed, and that there's sort of high impact, short innings, often finishing not out. That's a real specific role that I think he fills really well, and I think they use him quite well in the way they kind of float around, just play the match situation. And DK, maybe last 5 overs, you're the man. As soon as they win in the last 5 overs, you're the next hit.
Okay, let's see how RCB play their cards because they need the win and they might really treat every game going forward as a cup final, and that will move them on to 18 points if my memory serves me right. Right, let's end this match preview. I'll ask you predictions then, because surely the men in green this time will have to get the job done, or do you think it'll be the Orange Army who will prevail again?
going with my heart with this one, going with RCB.
Yeah, that's how we love it. That's how we always really kind of call it here on cricket.com.